We all know why we're here. So let me ask you a question then. Why the big secret? Truth seekers were really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we're knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, truth seekers were really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, break it down, now can you peep it? They're deceiving all the people. Let me ask you, what's the secret? Misinformation and lies, a devious disguise. They want the EMF blast until our brains is fried. Oh, point their beams in the sky. Oh, it's a movie now. This world is all CGI, their plot is truly foul. But we're here to rise up and bring the real. Time is now, truth seekers, y'all know how I feel. Truth seekers were really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we're knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, truth seekers were really the true leaders. Keep it grooving, the movement like two-seaters. Turn it up, we knocking through both speakers. It's time we get the truth from the big secret keepers. Hey, why the big secret?
All right, truth seekers, this is Roderick Martin. I want to welcome you to Roderick Martin, Why the Big Secret. And we got a great show for you here tonight. We're going to have the greatness of Nick Pope. He's going to be here with us, and just kind of give you a quick background. Nick is one of the best out there, I call it, actually, when it comes down to this UFO talk. And basically, he was part of the British government. And from 1991 to 1994, he researched and investigated UFOs, aliens, abductions, crop circles. In fact, he was known as the Fox Mulder when it comes down to these UFOs. And so he's consulted plenty of TV shows. So when it comes down to somebody who knows what we're going to be going with, it is Nick Pope. We're going to talk a little bit about, maybe we can get a few answers on the Calvine photo. We're going to go through that a little bit. Got a few questions for Nick with that. We're going to get down into just a little bit of that conversation we had when we watched him and Steven when they talked about Skinwalker. And we're going to talk about a few other things in the history when it comes down. In fact, we're going to go all the way back almost a decade when it comes down to some information, especially the most significant event in history, which was this one here. And we're going to talk to Nick Pope about that. But most importantly, I got another little history lesson that I'm going to go with. We're going to go into something that I think is real significant, especially when it comes down to our history. This is the original Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen, okay? And what do they have to do with UFOs or anybody in particular? We'll talk about that in the show. You definitely don't want to miss that, because there is a significant piece to the Red Tails, the original Tuskegee Airmen, when it comes down to UFO history. And with that being said, I cannot wait to get into the conversation with my friend Nick Pope. Now, with that being said, let's kick this show off. All right, truth seekers, this is Roderick Martin. I want to welcome you to Why the Big Secret here on Forbidden Knowledge TV. And as always, you could have been any other place tonight, but you chose to be right here, right now. And with that being said, I like to take the time to do the honor of wishing you good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the 24 time zones that the show airs, and whatever you're doing at this point. Now, I always lay down the rules that we got a big promise that we're going to do here on this show, and I'm glad you asked me what that is, and so let me share that with you right now. Our plan is to be the boldest, baffling, belligerent YouTube channel in the world, creating captivating conversations that'll certainly cause controversy. Join me tonight and the crew after we have this great interview with the greatness of Nick Pope. But in the meantime, I got a little more information to disclose with you since you like disclosure. So I'm located in the Jumbo State. This is where those UFOs come out to play, and it is a Texas thing, y'all. So that's how it be. So I'm excited. We're going to get down with this conversation. And so if you got a few questions, don't hesitate to super chat those bad boys so I can see it. All right. So in the meantime, you know the rules. Put the children to bed because things we talk about is not PG. So I'm ready. So let's shut this down a little early here and we'll get into that conversation. Let me take a quick drink. I've been shouting all weekend doing some stuff. I was out and about at a couple of events doing some UFO shows. And so we're actually talking to people about UFOs. You cannot wait to see the footage that I'm going to be sharing with you guys in the future. So anyway, tonight's conversation, like we said, is we're going to get down into some heavy conversations. And so it's going to be a little whyology for all of us. And we're going to get into some questions of why is there so much big secrecy when it comes down to these UFOs? And maybe Nick can answer that for us. We're going to ask a lot of other questions. What if they actually could be hiding from us from his perspective? And ultimately, we got a few more questions. Why are they so not the government, the big secret keepers do not want to share this information besides just simply telling us, hey, we know UFOs are real. At least they can do that, right? So we'll get Nick's opinion on that in just a minute and a few other questions. But in the meantime, I just like to, again, welcome each and every one of you here tonight. And if you haven't had an opportunity, definitely check out some of the other shows when we had Richard Dolan here a few weeks ago. Billy Carson, of course, y'all know who that is when we talked about the underwater aliens, and those are some of our bigger episodes. But in the meantime, if you find value in tonight's show, I definitely want you to smash the like button and definitely share what we got going on today. So in the news right now, there's not much, I would say, when it comes down to what's happening with these UFOs. And once again, for me, I just I'm a MUFON investigator. So I was working on a few cases this week and actually got some very good photos of possibly a UFO sighting. And so once that case is closed, I do plan on sharing it with each and every one of you so that you can get involved with that in a minute. We'll get Nick Pope in here in just a second. So sit back, get you some questions answered. We're going to take a deep dive. Like I said, we're going to cover a couple of the different areas here in just a moment, and we will get started. And after that, I'll get the crew in to maybe, go over a few things that we heard and talked about tonight. And so once again, if you're going to do that. So with that being said, again, if you have not subscribed to Why the Big Secret, make sure you go ahead and do that. That's the YouTube channel. So do support us. We do live stream like the other days of the week, Thursdays and some Fridays. And eventually we'll get back to some Mondays. But in the meantime, we're here on Tuesdays, then Thursday and Friday over at Why the Big Secret YouTube channel. And so we'll be doing that right now. All right. So with that being said, give me about, a couple of minutes. So get ready. Nick is already here in the back office with us. So I'll bring him into the show and we'll get things started right about now. But in the meantime, let's do that right now. So Nick, how's it going?
Hey, Roderick. Yeah, good. All's good here. Great to see you again.
Same here. And glad you're here with us. And I just really was excited. I'm glad you popped in a few moments early. I know we had a timed event of another 5 minutes, but hey, you know what? I saw you there and I said, let's get ready to rumble. And so Nick, first of all, I want to thank you for being here with us. Again, as I always say to everybody, even our listeners, they could have been anywhere else, but they chose to be right here, right now with us, and so are you. And I want to thank you for being here right now, for starters.
Thank you. No, it's good to be back.
All right. So with that being said, one of the things I want to point out before even we get started, for those of you, if you are a world traveler, just let you know, I am going to be on a Hidden Secrets Reveal cruise that's coming up. And this is going to be in April. And I'm going to be one of the speakers there, along with the greatness of Nick Pope. And as you see, Jimmy Church and a few others, as you see on this list. And if you guys are into the UFO talk and you want to join us on that particular cruise and maybe sit down and I don't know, have some UFO talk, Nick, I can't wait. We're going to be there in April. And you and I are going to spend a lot of time together.
We are. It's going to be great fun. I think it's going to be a meeting of minds. There are so many interesting people there, and I'm sure anyone who comes along will just basically get to not only hear the lectures, but hang out with us all socially. And heck, we'll probably end up doing a sky watch on the deck.
Absolutely. Yes. I heard about one of the persons going to bring their infrared cameras, and we're going to be doing that. I thought that was pretty exciting. So anyway, if you are interested in joining myself and Nick and all of us, there is a link in the description of this video. So you can go down there and click it, get all of the facts. If you decide to join us, there will be a reference there. You can put that you heard about it from Roderick Martin, Why the Big Secret here. If you did that, that'll be just perfectly fine. Or if you saw Nick here as well. So either way, definitely check it out. So Nick, this is a long-waited conversation. I'll take time somewhere along the way to let people know the greatness that you have played in my life. And so I'll save that mushy stuff for a little moment later. But in the meantime, I got to start with this particular photo, the infamous Calvin photo. And I don't know what you can say about this. Give us some inside details. If anything different that we have not heard anywhere else, but we're going to hear it right here. Anything.
Okay, well, a little bit of background first, I think. What I should say is that this is one of the most amazing cases in the UK Ministry of Defence's UFO files. My predecessor actually led the investigation on this, so I'm not going to claim any credit here because this was August 1990, and I did that job from 91 to 94. But what I can tell you is that I inherited the political fallout. And my goodness, there was some political fallout because here's what happened. Two people out in the Scottish Highlands, and this was 2 days after Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. So there's a lot going on in terms of geopolitics. Two people see this huge diamond-shaped craft, and it's hovering fairly slowly. And there's a couple of military jets, one in the background, but one in the foreground, and it's making some low-level passes. The witnesses aren't sure whether this jet is trying to intercept this UFO or whether it is escorting this UFO. But after a couple of low-level passes, the UFO just suddenly, from a virtual hover, kind of goes straight up at incredible speed, like vertical, and disappears. And to cut a long story short, we had a poster-sized enlargement. There were 6 photos sent to us at the Ministry of Defense. We had a poster-sized enlargement of the best one of them on our office wall in the UFO program. And eventually it got taken down because my head of division convinced himself that because he thought there's no such thing as aliens, he said, this can only be some sort of secret prototype, hypersonic, United States spy plane, something like that. So he removed the picture. And then when we declassified and released the Ministry of Defense UFO files, the picture was nowhere to be seen. It had gone without a trace. And what's happened in the last few weeks is that a retired, there are a lot of question marks over this, but a retired Royal Air Force public relations, public affairs officer called Craig Lindsay has come forward and said, hey, you know these infamous lost photos? Well, I kept one. You know, I took one home when I worked at the Ministry of Defense, and it's been in my garage for like, 30 years, and here it is. Now, I don't want to set too many hairs running with this, because obviously a lot of people have said, come on, man, is that really credible? And that's kind of where we are right now. And the official position of the UK Ministry of Defense is that they are not saying whether or not this is one of the real photos or not. So we have a real life mystery.
Wow. For me, Nick, honestly, for a moment, when I looked at the photos, even a long time ago, and then when they resurface, you just really start taking that closer look, and I'll bring it up just real quickly. And, I just looked at the back of that when it looked like it had a tail, which I thought that could possibly have been some man-made object, because of the fact that UFOs that I was thinking didn't need any type of rudder or that our modern technology was using. And so did you ever look at that end of that or speculate that from any point from your vantage view?
Yeah, we did. And I should say, by the way, that the image that you're showing there is actually that's a recreation. Now, it's based off one of the original images from a declassified Ministry of Defense file,
okay.
But that picture is actually a recreation. There's another picture floating around that, as I say, Craig Lindsay says is one of the originals. But this is where it gets really confusing, because, we looked at that. Our number one question, of course, was how does this thing fly? If this really is the size that some of our experts thought it was, and because this was a picture, most UFO pictures, as you know, they're pretty, they're blurry, they're taken.
Yeah.
Exactly. This one is daylight, and there are other features visible. What that means is that the mathematicians, the geometrists can get to work on it, and they can kind of use trigonometry, and they can start to calculate things like how far away was this from the camera, how high was it above the ground, how wide is it, those sorts of things. And of course, our number one question was, if this thing is for real, which some of the experts thought it was, how does it fly? What is its propulsion system? What energy source keeps something that big just hanging there? And then, if the witnesses are to be believed, accelerating vertically at high speed. So look, there's a lot of controversy about this right now. There are several different images doing the rounds. Nobody is entirely sure what's real and what isn't, and the Ministry of Defense isn't commenting. So we'll see what happens.
Well, before we move on to our next topic here, what was it like for you, though, working in a department where you were to oversee these type of phenomena, but then you have a boss or someone up above who just, and they're not having it or can't fathom it? How did you do your job? And was everything that you probably went and say, here, take a look at this. Nah, I don't want to see it. Take a look at this. Nah, I don't believe it. Take a look at this. No. And did you ever get the feeling like, wait a minute, man, you're on the other side of this thing? You know what I'm saying? Over your time?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, and it gets to the heart of a difficulty that I faced, and it gets to the heart of a difficulty that people like Lou Elizondo faced as well, because look, there were kind of three factions. I mean, people talk about a skeptic versus believer debate going on in government, and we had that, but it was even more difficult than that. We had a three-way dogfight, because there was a faction that said this is all nonsense. It's all misidentifications, hoaxes, and delusions. It's a waste of taxpayers' money to be even looking at this. Then there was a faction that said, well, there might be something to this. It's in our airspace, speeds, maneuvers, and accelerations that we can't match. We should be taking a look. And I was kind of in that faction. But then there was a third faction, and this is really, truly bizarre. And these people said, we think it's real, but we think it might be demonic. Because these people were kind of, Christian fundamentalists who believed in things like demons. And there's a passage in the Bible, in the book of Ephesians, if I'm probably mispronouncing it,
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Okay. Well, there's a passage where it talks about Satan, and it uses the phrase, the prince of the power of the air. And there's a faction, there always has been, both in the UK and the US, who've seized on that, and they've said, UFOs are demonic. Therefore, although we believe they're 100% real, we do not believe that you should be engaging with them, because to do so gives them energy, feeds it. You know what I'm saying? So this was what we were up against. Now, I don't know that my boss, my head of division, fell into that category, but he certainly didn't fall into what I would call the sort of open-minded, scientific, there's something here, let's take a look at it faction. He was the sort of it can't be, so it isn't faction. And that was difficult. It genuinely was.
And I bet it was, because I remember Lou Elizondo, when he filed his grievance that was revealed by Stephen at the time, or was it John Greenwald? I'm sorry. And in that, he made a statement that there was an issue with some of the congressmen and senators that was taking the religious approach to things. That was one of the reasons why they wouldn't investigate these UFOs. And for me, Nick, I think it's kind of like, I don't know where there should be that fine line between a politician's job to protect the people or to do whatever is necessary, country first. Of course, we know God, country, and how they want to put this. But the whole point is, I think for me personally, that we should not have anyone in those positions that is not going to take the scientific approach when it comes to this, or the curiosity approach, not the priesthood side when it comes down to protecting the people or to investigate these things. And I don't think that's happening, but as far as that change would ever happen, and I wonder if we can ever get to a point to where our officials at some point are chosen in those particular criteria areas to protect people far and foremost, or investigate whatever possibilities. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's difficult. I feel somewhat conflicted on this. I tend to take a libertarian approach to this, that people are free to believe what they want to believe and to say what they want to say about this. And I welcome diversity of opinion when it comes to UFOs, when it comes to anything. Let's not go down the cancel culture route with UFOs. For goodness sake, we have it in enough of everything else. Let's not do it with UFOs. So on the one hand, the people that say they think it's demonic, they're perfectly entitled to that opinion.
I agree with you on that.
But should they then be entitled to shut down debate and discussion and inquiry from other people who take differing views and say, well, look, what if this is something nuts and bolts and physical? What if it's China? What if it's Russia? What if it is extraterrestrial? But what if it just obeys the ordinary laws of physics? Maybe a physics we don't yet fully understand, but the laws of physics, as opposed to anything more nebulous. Then, so it's difficult. I don't profess to have any right or wrong answers here, but I think it's a darned interesting debate to have.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's something that, like I said, I'm just more concerned of it. I just think the like Dr. Spock used to told Kirk, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and therefore that should be like principle 101 for anyone who's in any political realm, when it comes down protecting the people or going for the people's needs, and that's just something I live by, or would hope that would be happening. But I don't
Me
know.
too. Me too. And I mean, on that point, I do take the view that if anyone, whether it's from a religious viewpoint or whatever it is, if anyone simply takes the lazy way out and says it can't be, so it isn't, and ignores data, when those data are on our radar systems, when they're on our military satellites, when they are on our forward-looking infrared videos, then that, I think, is something that I would absolutely not support.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right. Well, glad we talked about that and got that out. You know, I just wanted to get some of that Calvine photo information for Why the Big Secret. All right. So my next topic here, real quick, before we get into the main good stuff that I want to, Nick, you know, I got the book. I got the books. And I spent probably, let me put up this photo. This is you and Steven, and you can see my little conspiracy type panel photo. I created that. And I watched both of those videos, and I did 2 YouTube segments about Skinwalker. And then I did another one here last week where we probably got 30,000 views maybe. And once again, I'm going to take a personal approach. You know, that investigating reporting that Steven does is, number one, it's off the charts. And then, of course, you being there, I'm a fan. And I still took a kind of a beating a little bit when people like, well, you're trying to start this thing. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying there's not something strange going there. I'm just more concerned about the story of how we got here and how this spawned into all of these other stories. One of the things that stuck out the most in the interview is when you first began to say, back in the day, there was no written languages for the Navajos or the Indian people or whatever. And so the stories being passed down for anything that was happening in Skinwalker were more verbal. So we're talking storytelling. And I've participated in many things when I was a young kid where we whisper to the first person something and they whisper. And by the time it gets to the other side of the room, nevertheless, generations now, it was totally different story. You know, that was the things that we did. So where I'm going with this is, what is going on there from your perspective, not to pin things down, but you sat there, y'all went through the evidence. Are we really been taken for a small trip with this thing?
Well, I don't know. It's a very difficult one. And Stephen Greenstreet is obviously one of the most controversial characters in this whole subject today. And I think the reason he's controversial is because he's done such a demonstrable 180-degree flip, in a sense, because for the first 2 seasons of The Basement Office, he came in as like somebody who, and the big reveal in one of the previous episodes was, of course, that one of the reasons for his looking into this so deeply was that he had a sighting too. So it's okay. Like, yeah, I'm a journalist. I work for the New York Post. I want to take a look at this. And then he's got this backstory. So we do 2 seasons of looking at some of the most iconic cases in the history of the phenomenon and some of the themes that run through all this. And then Stephen took another look, and he kind of, he read the books and he listened to the interviews, and he thought, wait a minute, something doesn't quite add up. And, he's taken a lot of flack for it, but in a sense, that makes him one of the most honest people in this field, because he could probably been a whole lot more popular if he'd just stuck to the true believer narrative. But he said, wait a minute, I have some questions. And what season 3 of The Basement Office is it Stephen's questions. It's, wait, something doesn't quite add up here. We're being given a narrative, but the narrative, there's a disconnect. And where I think he feels particularly passionate is that obviously I don't think he's made any secret of the fact that he believes a lot of this, or certainly some of this, or a significant proportion of this is, for example, Chinese drones. And we hear a lot about the technology that is either here or is coming soon, drone swarms, AI-controlled drone swarms, a clear and present danger to the United States. And I think Stephen feels, I don't want to speak to him on this, for him on this, but I think he feels that a clear and present danger to the United States is getting lost in what he thinks is a false narrative. And so, as I say, season 3 is, wait a minute, I have some questions. And I think anyone that takes a serious interest in this subject should say, okay, I get that. What are your questions? And then take a look at it and see what he comes up with. Because I think these are legitimate issues. And the day we just stop asking questions and accept the narrative on anything, not just UFOs, is a very sad day.
I agree with you. My tagline is, your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. It's time to think why. And basically, it's basically saying, go beyond the narrative. You have to start asking why. We did it when we were kids quite naturally until it was beaten out of some of us. My mom, don't ask me why, just do what you're told. And it's like we carry that into adulthood. And I think they know that. So it's a psychological thing. You mentioned something real quickly about swarms of AI. And now is this more of a man-made thing? Because I have one of our team members, he has a UFO video that we're going to be doing in one of the shows, and I made him send it to you and have a look at it. And he's really adamant about, hey, it's a swarm. It was 40 or 50, and it was UFOs or drones or somebody in the background, one of his daughters was saying birds. But he definitely have done enough work to figure that he felt that they could be UAPs. But you just mentioned swarms and AI controlled drones, and I just thought that just clicked on my mind to bring in conversation. So
yeah, and everything that they show you in these promotional videos from defense corporations, everything that is on a news report on this, or everything that's accidentally captured on camera, is probably 20, 30 years out of date. I mean, the real stuff is probably being tested at Area 51 and places we've never heard of. And so the real level of technological advance is way ahead of what people are seeing right now. And that's a concern. I mean, we see things right now which are a concern. You see drones operating over US Navy ships in restricted training areas.
Yeah.
But then you've got to factor in that the tech is probably 10, 15, 20 years ahead of that. And it's scary.
Wow. All right. Before we move on, I got a couple of quick clips because I'm still kind of hung here. Here's one of the clips.
See a UFO, report a UFO, see anything weird, see anything paranormal, nothing.
And then
no evidence. If you're looking for physical evidence and solid proof, and they don't have it.
So real quickly before we move on from there, that was pretty much things that really blew me away when y'all was having that discussion. And of course, I made a big deal on dino beavers and monsters, and really I made a big deal about the dino beavers thing. And I thought for a minute, not this book, but the first one. And once you think about the stories and how you guys broke that down, and Stephen broke it down, and then you see the birth of all the other books, I think came from after that, right? And just the unintended consequences of this story, dino beavers. Before we move on, how in the heck did that come up in a story? Dino beavers.
Well, it is an actual description from the book that you're holding up, and now I don't know what those people saw, but obviously it kind of lends itself to a comedic interpretation, which is probably not what the authors intended when when they wrote that, they probably meant to basically say there was a sighting, there was an experience, and it was very weird. But of course, whether by intention or not, as I say, it just comes across as comedic, and I don't know. None of us were there when that happened, so I have no idea what took place. But I think all of this.
So I have to ask the ultimate question, and then we're going to do a quick commercial break. When you read the word dino beavers for the first time, what was your reaction? Like, what? Or did you go, we got to investigate that?
Of course I laughed, but I wonder. I mean, I've had this discussion with Stephen. I wonder. I'm going to have to send you a picture of this, but I wonder whether, and I know that they're not supposed to range that far, but never underestimate animals and their ability to fill a niche. When I read that description, you know what I thought? And Elizabeth and I live on like 3.5 acres in Tucson, and we get javelinas. Javelinas are a kind of wild boar, and when you sneak up on them,
I've seen your picture.
When you sneak up on them unawares, their hackles rise, the fur stands, and it does. I can see that it would almost look like spines. And the interesting thing is, they're quite big, but they can move through the underbrush, undergrowth in quite a stealthy fashion. I'm going to send you a picture of one of these that I took myself.
So would they be native to where Skinwalker is?
Well, that's the thing. Some people say they're not that far north, but like I say, never underestimate an animal. And I think all too often when we're looking at natural history, people say, oh, animals are in that range. And it turns out they've migrated much further than you think. I mean, it's just a wild guess. I may be wide of the mark, but I wonder if the infamous dino beaver isn't in fact a startled and somewhat angry javelina.
Or a badger.
You heard it here first, Roderick.
I heard it here first. We're gonna go deep there, and I think that would be a perfect. You know what? That would be probably a great mission to go on, and to be like, okay, we're gonna get down to the dino beaver investigation. Period, because that is worthy of that. I just really think it is, and I must admit, when I read it, I was like, what? And now after going through all this, I'm like, no, I couldn't have failed for that one, but I did. So, all right, I got a couple of quick commercials to play real quick, and then we'll get into the second half and some great questions I have for you. And we're going to go back in history about a decade from actually almost today, to that event that I think was the event that this one here, let me kind of bring a picture up. This one was one of the most significant days in almost a decade as of right now, a few days off. And I want you to take us back there and when I come back from these commercials, okay?
Sure.
Let me play this right now. All right. So here is a video of episode 3 that's now airing on Forbidden Knowledge TV, Why the Big Secret. So you all can kind of check this out. If you have not, definitely go to whythebigsecret.com. If you want a free trial to Forbidden Knowledge TV, you can definitely do that. So let me kind of play the episode for you or the program. I'm Roderick Martin, and today I'm going to break down a documentary, Two-Face the Gray, which is one of the most profound alien gray stories of all time. This is why I think it's important to understand. This documentary covers a specific timeline in our American history that I think everyone should know about. According to the record, Craig and his team was offered money to investigate paranormal on the Cockatoo Island by the Australian government. According to the insider that he received this information, allegedly January the 15th, 1933 was a significant date. The Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, dispatch a scientific discovery group to Antarctica. Now, this was a classified mission that is launched during what we would consider the secret time that there was a race between China, United States, as well as Russia when it came down to the nuclear war. All right, everyone. If you are interested in a cruise and you want to have a vacation, but you're into the UFO things and all of above, then you want to come to the Hidden Secrets Reveal cruise. This is in April 7th to the 14th in 2023, and it's going to be a great day and some great days. You're going to spend 7 days out in the luxurious cruise line here. But here's the deal. We're going to be talking about UFOs, and there's going to be seminars and people, Skywatch, and I'm telling you, you want to come. If you want to be there, I'm going to be there. Nick Pope is going to be there. Jimmy Church, a lot of others are going to be there. Join us and have a sit down. And you know what? Drinks on me. I'm going to actually give you a few drinks that you could have when you get on the ship. In fact, just tell them Roderick sent you, and you'll be able to do that and have those drinks. And I know that they will enjoy that, Nick, when it comes down to the drinks. All right. So, and once again, Nick is going to be there as well. We're going to have some great times, and you guys can come. And there's a link in the description that's going to give you more details about the cruise, the itinerary, all the places that we're going to be visiting for those 7 days, and of course the prices. And if you decide to register, there's going to be a drop down. Say that you heard it from Roderick Martin. Why the Big Secret? Be most appreciative. And I will see you there. Let me know that you are coming, and then we're going to be doing that as well. So check it out. Again, links in the description. Nick, okay, we're going to get into some great stuff here. And again, I appreciate you being here with us. And then I got a few questions that we're going to throw into the pot here. Let's take us back. We're going to go back until this particular time. This is where, this is back in September. Basically about a decade ago, and almost to a few days away from today's date, Charles Halt, the former Air Force colonel, accuses the U.S. over UFO cover-ups. Now, reason why I'm taking us back to this time, because there's so much people are thinking about disclosure, and we're thinking about what we're about to hear, or if they're about to tell all. But back then, this guy came forward and said, hey, wait a minute. And one of the things that stood out the most was this particular quote. He said he's heard many people say that it's time for the government to appoint an agency to investigate it. But he said, folks, there is an agency, a very closed-held, compartmentalized agency that's been investigating this thing for years. And there is very active role they play by many of our intelligence agency, and probably don't even know the details of what happens once they collect the data. It's kind of scary. What are your thoughts about that? Take me back to that, because you was there. In fact, let me put a picture. There you are, right there in the right corner, 10 years ago. All right. So take us back to that moment, because I think that was really significant. I knew of the event. This was 10 years ago. I couldn't afford to go at the time anyway, but I was always a fan. And I expected, just like everybody else, that was supposed to be the one. That was like we thought this thing here lately, this 180-day report. But back then, that event was was tagged as the one. We was going to hear about it. This was it. And I think even you gave a disclaimer saying, hey, guys, I'm sorry. If you was waiting for the spaceship in the hangar, it's just not there. Take us back to that day.
Well, it was really interesting for sure, because as you know, it was held at the National Atomic Testing Museum. So it kind of looked like a semi-official event.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a whole bunch of government insiders, ex-government, ex-military, ex-intelligence agency people up there on the panel, all talking about this. And I think people thought that everything was going to be very calm and everyone was going to agree with each other. And then I have to say that Colonel Halt kind of broke ranks a little bit on this, because normally there's almost like an unwritten rule. You're all up there and you don't want to criticize too much and you don't want to rock the boat. But he gave them both barrels. I mean, that quote that you put up there, basically he was sitting at one of our national museums and basically saying that the United States government was not telling the truth about this, because of course that quote must be viewed against the background of what the US government was saying officially at the time, which was nobody is interested in this subject anymore since Project Blue Book closed down, and nobody is investigating. What does Colonel Charles Halt say? Folks, there's an agency, and there it is. You have the quote up. So my goodness, that wasn't just rocking the boat; it was darn near sinking it. And there was, I have to tell you, things got a little bit heated between him and Colonel John Alexander, who's retired U.S. Army. So you had these two kind of related but different views on UFOs. You throw in a little bit of Army versus Air Force rivalry, and it was fireworks. It really was.
Yeah, I would think about it, because it's almost like, even back then, now that I look back on it, it's almost like you have the factions, because it was still at this time that this should be kept a secret. And then, of course, this is the first remnants of the whistleblowers beginning to come out. And it's like, no, we're not having this. And there was other people there. I think Coleman was there. He was and then I'll get into my highlight guy that was there in a minute, Mr. Friend, Robert Friend. So, that is my highlight. But again, this has been going on quite some time. So my question is, why don't the government just simply, since we know that UFOs are real? I mean, I think that's not even a question that nobody should be asking anymore. But I do tell people all the time, I say, well, anything flying around that we don't know what it is considered a UFO. And not all UFOs are alien driven, right? However, some aliens do use UFOs to get around in, I'm sure. Why don't the government simply say, okay, we're going to admit that, just admit it. We're not alone. They're here, but we're not just going to tell you about the tech that we're trying to get. But they're still just trying to hold this thing close to the vest. And I just think they should at least tell people part A. And I think that's what most people want. Even though we know, we still want them to say UFOs are real and are not China. They're from somewhere else. I mean, although they're I guess I'm just making a long question. Although they're trying to say we want to investigate these anomalies, but the fact that there's extraterrestrial life, how about that? That's where I'm getting at. Why don't they admit that?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier about there being factions on this, and there are factions who believe different things about what we're dealing with. And there are factions who have different ideas about how to respond to the phenomenon, whatever its true nature. And I think that's why, when you look back at the preliminary assessment that was written in June 2021 by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, that kind of, it shows you that, because it's a compromise. And in a sense, it's the only report they could have delivered, given the factions on this. Because the key phrase in the report was where it talked about how there probably isn't one single answer to this. There are probably multiple solutions to the mystery, several different things going on at once. And of course, the idea that some of these things might be from China and the possibility that some of these things might be extraterrestrial, these are not mutually exclusive ideas. If you shoot one down and you find I'm joking, but if you see it says made in China on the bottom, it
Right,
doesn't mean that they're all made in China. The next one
Right.
you shoot down might just say made in Zeta Reticuli.
Yeah, got some hieroglyphics on it or something, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
so that's kind of, to answer a question dear to your heart. That's why the big secret, and that's why I think, because the bottom line is, even within government, people can't agree on what we're dealing with or how to respond to it.
well, I think it's like you said, it is why the big secret when it comes down to we know there's the tech to it. And another question I have, and then I have plenty more. We got a little time left. And why, for me coming into this space, one of the things, and I think you and I had this discussion when we was in Las Vegas, and I think people take this thing too serious, and on a human level, when we get down to the human level, where it's just causing a lot of mental anguish for people. And I've always tried to bring in the humor, not to talk about someone or ridicule someone, but because I feel that someday this is going to be a normal conversation. Just as much as the bird droppings hit my car yesterday and say, man, all the birds got me. Hey, well, there's an alien down there at McDonald's, or whatever. Why is it that people cannot laugh about this in a conversation?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I think they should, because I think people take themselves far too seriously, and people. I mean, yes, these are serious issues, but so are a lot of things, and if we can't occasionally just take a step back and either walk away from it and get on with the other things in our lives, or just laugh at it and say, yeah, at some level, some of this is absurd, then I think we do ourselves a disservice. So absolutely, I agree with you on that. But I think that, the other thing is, people shouldn't take so much upon themselves. Nobody has to kind of feel that they single-handedly have to solve this. A lot of people obviously research and investigate, and people are like yourselves, commentators on it, investigators, influencers, but none of us, there's no pressure on any one single individual to solve the mystery. Chances are, like a lot of things, it's going to be a team effort. It's going to be a collaboration. And if we get over the line, you're going to look back and a lot of people will end up getting credit for the different pieces of the puzzle that they brought to the table before the true picture emerged. And one thing I would say is that a bunch of very smart people are looking at this right now. I mean, for example, NASA is just gearing up its study into this. After decades of saying we're not interested and we don't do UFOs, NASA is doing a study. In Congress, and we've discussed this before, but both in the Senate and the House, the intelligence committees, the armed services committees, they've had classified briefings. We've had one public hearing. Obviously, there's going to be more of that to come. There's been a public report, the ODNI one. A lot of people are working on this. A lot of people, government, military, intelligence community, scientific community, the private sector. Everyone is beginning, I think, to realize that there's something interesting and important here, and let's see what we can piece together.
Well, I think when you mentioned the private sector and how they, to me, I know they all working together as one. As one. Why not? They don't want to stop the check, right? But at the end of the day, when we're talking about this new whistleblowers amendment and all of these things, how significant is this going to be for what we're dealing with? Are we truly going to get people in the private sector to come forward? More people from the military come forward? Because I know you and I, and I'll talk about that in a minute, the first show that I was in, and you and I was there with Milton Torres. But at the same time, does this amendment really does some justice for anyone?
Yes, I think it does. And now I think there are two separate questions
Okay.
there. The first question is about the role of the private sector. And I think, yeah, sure, everyone would love people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Yuri Milner and Richard Branson and a few others, all to come together on this and to say, let's take a look. And it's interesting. I mean, literally, I think in 2 days' time, there is going to be the first annual Silicon Valley Secret Space Program conference held in Sunnyvale in the Bay Area. I'm going to be speaking at it. I'm not sure tickets are available at the door because it's like more of a business conference. I think tickets maybe are on sale today and tomorrow, and that's it.
I can fit in your pocket.
So there's that going on. It's a very good example of how Silicon Valley and big tech and all those sorts of people are dipping a toe in the water when it comes to this. So that's part of it. Then you've got the scientists outside of government. So you've got people like Professor Avi Loeb at Harvard running the Galileo project. Pulling together a multidisciplinary team of scientists to look at this with open eyes and open minds, and so he's somebody who's now very much a sort of thought leader in this space. But then I said there are two parts of the question. The other part, I think, is your point, and it was well made about how powerful this whistleblower provision might be. And what this is, and you know this, but for people watching, what this is it's language in the draft Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023, which is likely to be rolled into the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023. And it essentially says, what they want to do is say, if you have ever been involved in a highly classified UFO program, and you feel that you are still bound by your NDA or your security oath, come and talk to us in Congress, brief us on these programs, tell the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and before you do so, just so that you can be doubly sure that you're not breaking the law or being disloyal, we, the government, will formally, corporately release you from any prior agreement. Now, if that happens, and the language is there, the draft language is there, and it has bipartisan support, which is very important, this could be huge.
Wow. But why is it necessary that the government has to put that in place when they're funding the projects anyway, and they already know?
Well, what they're looking at, you see, it's not so much the people in government now, it's Congress saying to people who were in government. So they're reaching out basically to a bunch of retirees and saying, if you have knowledge of historic programs, but you are rightly concerned that you don't want to break the law. Nobody's saying break the law. Nobody's saying disloyal. But if this passes, you know, the scrutiny that the draft legislation will get and is enacted, it will then, the moment the president signs it, it will become effectively an order from the commander-in-chief. So that's what's going on. It's not so much government that already knows. It's the part of government, i.e. Congress, that says we think there might be parts of government that know things they're not telling us, and we want a little bit of help in finding out who knows what. And that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, but couldn't the president signs it? Okay, bam, it's okay. Now, this is political. New president come in 2 years from now and said, No, I'm not going that route because my constituents put in $1 billion over here. It could just change overnight. It's not something, or is it going to be permanent? You know what I mean? Is
Well,
it going to
look,
stay?
yeah, the legislation, it's likely to get absorbed into the National Defense Authorization Act, and that is likely to be passed either late this year or early next year. So whatever happens, there'll be 1.5 years, 2 years before a new president comes in. So as the old saying goes, a week is a long time in politics. 2 years is an eternity. So there's plenty of opportunity, but that's where it's so important that this has bipartisan support. And you can look at who's supporting this, and you will find, on the one hand, for example, Republicans like Marco Rubio, and on the other hand, Democrats like Kirsten Gillibrand, and they are coming together on this issue, which in these divided times is a good thing, I think anyway. But on the UFO issue, my goodness, the last thing we want is anyone politicizing this. So that's why it's so good that this has support right across the political aisle. So in a sense, it doesn't matter whether we get a different president in after the next election or not, because these bills, the National Defense Authorization Act, almost all, these are must-pass acts. You've got to have the NDAA for the military to do what the military do. Now, obviously, there's going to be some discussion and debate and a bit of horse trading about a clause here, a sentence there. But that's why the next few months are going to be really exciting. But watch this whistleblower provision. This is possibly going to be the most impactful part of all the UFO related provisions that are in the draft legislation as we currently see it.
Wow. I just think it's I don't know. It's exciting. Of course, we want to know. I don't know if it'll allow people like yourself who says, I've been around this a long time. There's things that I've seen and want to talk about, and then, would allow you to come forth or anyone else. But I get what you're saying. I just think I don't know. It's like the rules the game is the same for them to keep the big secret keepers, is what I call the government. But they might have changed the rules. It's just that they adapt so quickly. And it's like they already prepare. Oh, yeah, y'all can come out with this amendment, but we're going to classify this, though. And it's just like, that's not going to work. Oh, if he says something that's against national security, now he can't talk. The amendment doesn't work for that, so.
Yeah, and speaking personally, I don't know whether I would be invited to testify or not. Obviously, my experience of these programs is somewhat out of date, and it's UK, not US, but some of the issues are still the same, and there's certainly a read across. I think it would be an interesting jurisdictional and legal question on which I would have to seek advice from my old bosses, but we'll see what happens.
All right. So when I was looking back at this event back in 2012, and I've already been doing the research on ufology in the African American community. I've been doing a lot of investigation, finding those stories, and actually putting together a project now that I can bring forward on looking at things in our community and how that works. But one of the things I said at the beginning of the show, let me bring this up. This is a photo of the original Tuskegee Airmen, the original Red Tails that was there. Of course, everybody's seen the story. I've heard of the story of the Red Tails and how significant they were back in I think it was World War II or
Yes.
1 or 2. Yeah. But little conversations, and as I start digging into for our community and stories, little conversations bring up what I'm about to show that exactly he was there at the event, Robert Friend. And this guy, of course, he had a statement there too. He says, my primary explanation of these things is that they're real. And I would much better if the government or some agency would take these things and pursue the scientific aspects of it. Now, a lot of people don't know he was the director of the Air Force. He was one of the original Tuskegee Airmen who later on went on to head up part of Project Blue Book from 1958 to 1963. And I thought at this time when I'm still doing my investigations and writing some stuff about this, is that, and I didn't know you knew him. So we're going to talk about this on the cruise for sure. And because I got to get some backstories. But the whole point is I thought about it and I was like, in that day of time, and this is just me, not you can comment if you want. And you think about how the subject matter was not taken so seriously and nobody wanted to put their career in front of this thing, that here is this gentleman, he's African-American, and they put him ahead of Project Blue Book. Now, for me, I've watched many documentaries. I never heard of it. I just ran across, I'm like, huh? And not that it's not significant, but then I start thinking about this old joke of G14 classify, if you're going to ruin somebody's career, why not put somebody? So you met him, you know the history back then. I wonder what kind of backlash, if he ever said anything that he encountered as a Black person in the 50s, talking about UFOs and saying, hey, I'm ahead of this group. I need y'all to report to me some things. What do you think about that?
Well, I can't claim to know him, to have known him very well. And that was the only time we met in person. But obviously it was amazing piece of history.
Yeah.
I mean, and so few people knew about this. And the reason they didn't know about it was because when everyone thinks of Project Blue Book, kind of Hollywood,
Hynek,
they think of Hynek. Now, Hynek wasn't even in the Air Force. He was the science advisor to Project Blue Book. But Hynek, deservedly, obviously, is such a big figure that he's kind of become synonymous with Project Blue Book. And then if people ever did think of any of the heads of Project Blue Book, they would have thought of Edward Ruppelt, who ran it in the early days. And he ran it, for example, during the big wave of sightings over Washington, D.C. in 1952. And he was the person who really coined the term UFO, which he kind of coined because he said, I want something that sounds more scientific. Let's get rid of flying saucer and replace it with UFO, which is kind of now what's happening with UFO and UAP. But because Ruppelt and particularly Dr. J. Allen Hynek are such well-known figures, they've obscured this wonderful character, Colonel Friend, who not only was one of the heads of Project Blue Book, but I'm probably going to mangle the pronunciation, but was one of the famous Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah.
And so few people knew of that connection. I knew of it. And I tell you what, I mean, I think those of us that went to that event were kind of almost more interested in talking to him about the Second World War and his experience of that than about Blue Book, which was not what the organizers wanted, of course, but over the coffee and cakes, that's what the discussions were about. And it's a fascinating, I mean, I know the story has been told, but maybe you're one of the first researchers to really do a deep dive into the fact that this fascinating character had these two really historically significant, but very, very different things in his backstory. That he'd been one of the Tuskegee Airmen, and then he went on to do Blue Book. I mean, that you couldn't make it up.
You can't make it up. And I'm sitting here, and I because during my research, I started going through 17 documentaries about Project Blue Book, and I'm sitting here, not one mentioned this guy, and he's 5 years. And I said, wait a minute. And of course, I'm not bringing the racial thing. I'm like, okay, it's a Black thing, no. But then I thought about it, and again, this is my personal part. I was like, it makes sense that back in the day, what colonel or somebody high rank, if they say, hey, we want to put you ahead of the UFO thing, and they'd be like, no, you ain't running my career, brother. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's give it to this guy, this G14 classified type thing. And so, not to diminish the work, but then now it's so significant today, we don't bring it up in our history. You get what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, it was a joke maybe back then, but now it's one of the most significant things in our history, and we don't even hear about it. And I'm like, I'm gonna bring it forward. I'm doing a whole thing on it, and I want people to know, yeah, okay, we got history in this. There was African Americans on the same ship, the same bases, seen experiences. We just didn't hear about it because you talk about injury to insult back then. What Black person would have went to the police department in the 50s and say, hey, I saw a UFO and don't hang me? You get what I'm saying? It's just
I see what you're saying, and yeah, it, like I say, it's a fascinating story that history seems to have forgotten. And one of the other, I mean, this is, I should mention that one of the other heads of Project Blue Book was a Major Hector Quintanilla, and
really
he was one of the highest ranking Hispanic officers in the United States Air Force at the time. So there's an interesting, I don't know whether that's just a coincidence or whether they felt, you know what, maybe these people have to be twice as tough, you know, to deal with all the kind of flack that comes with the UFO issue. But it's something to look into. But they were, you know, I think whether you're talking about Ruppelt or Hynek or Friend or Quintanilla, these were all they were all mavericks.
Yeah.
And I think in a sense they had to be to be doing that job. And the other thing about that job is they were people generally at the rank of major, who had to come up against much higher ranks.
Oh my God, yeah.
In their dealings, because I mentioned, for example, Edward Ruppelt and the 1952 UFO wave. Well, they had a press conference at the Pentagon about that, and they basically put up General Roger Ramey, General Stamford, and Ruppelt was sitting behind, handing the notes and whispering the conversations. But there are not many majors who are having those sorts of interactions with the sort of 2-3-star generals, 4-star generals even.
Wow. Again, it's just something. I got a couple more questions before you get out of here. All right. So, Nick, what's the big secret when it comes down to, I mean, I think you and I talked, but we got religious people now hovering the wagons. You know, you hear about this summons of trying to see this phenomenon from a religious perspective. Yeah, we got the private sector involved. Oh yeah, we got the big secret keepers, the government, and then we have the human thing. What, from your perspective, and I know we talked, and I know it could fall in a tech range, but what is the big secret when it comes down to this whole UFO thing, in your perspective?
Yeah, the big secret is the technology. And in one sense, I mean, I think you answered your own question, and it doesn't, in one sense, matter. Well, it does, but there are a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who might get to it first. Is it going to be government? Is it going to be like Silicon Valley and big tech? Is it going to be China? Is it going to be Russia? Is it going to be the United States? But it is, the answer to your question is, it's the technology, or it's the technology that somebody might derive from a better understanding of what we're dealing with. And that's why when you look at what they did under the ORSAP and ATIP program, a lot of it was technology related. A lot of it was advanced theoretical physics, looking at anti-gravity, invisibility, warp drive, wormholes, trying to figure out how these things fly. Because the first person to do that, whoever it is going to be, top dog.
And I tell people all the time, and they think I'm not serious, and I say, listen, it's not China, it's not one of these foreign countries. Who wouldn't, any country out there that have the ability to tie some weapon on something that can zip this, would not face the United States and say, wait a minute, we're now the big dogs, right? And it's like, we know it's not another country, this is somewhere else. Now, I'm not saying that there's no technology that they could be practicing or trying to build, but we do know, like you just said, who wouldn't want to have the technology to transmedium technology and instantaneous, acceleration, and then figure out how to put a weapon on it like Hitler was trying to do with the Bell and change the dynamics of life, period,
Sure.
So,
It's not just war fighting technology, it's war winning technology.
there we go. Plain and simple. And I try to tell people all the time, that's what it's about. This is why it is that's why we're not going to work with these other countries. We're not going to go over to one of these smaller countries and share the tech with them. That's not happening. Okay, last question. I think I've already done that. So what's next happening for you? First, let me kind of show that you have several books out right now. And one in particular that have always been interested to me was this Rendlesham Forest. I actually got a copy of that one. But you have a couple of other ones out here. What would be a good read for people who want to really grab some things from this whole phenomenon from one of these books that you have here?
Well, I think Encounter in Rendlesham Forest is a really good deep dive into a single case, but it also gives a wider perspective of how we approach this within government.
Okay.
Then I would say my two sci-fi novels, Operation Thunderchild and Operation Lightning Strike, even though they're fiction, they try to take some of these themes and float a few ideas that I could probably not really float in non-fiction books. But the most recent is Blood Brothers. And you know what? It goes back to what you were saying about having a little bit of fun with this. Blood Brothers is nothing to do with UFOs. It's nothing to do with the paranormal. It's just, a thriller about special forces and intelligence agencies going after terrorists. So I would say, switch off from this subject for a while.
Yeah.
Put your feet up, have a coffee or a glass of vino or a cold beer or whatever's your fancy. And if you want an insight into who I am and the sorts of things that I enjoy writing about, and when I do a book and developing characters and unfolding a plot, Blood Brothers is the one I would recommend.
And then furthermore, here's a picture. This is you and I and Milton Torres, and this is me here when we both are in this movie, Discovery Plus Alien Endgame, and had an opportunity, you and I and Milton, his son, Jeff.
His son, Jeff Torres, discussing, of course, his father, the late Milton Torres. Amazing case that obviously you have discussed and investigated on television in the show. But it was an amazing dinner we had.
Yes, we did. And you gave me some great information that I'm not going to share, and I've always took it, but I'm still striving to be that information that you shared and let everyone know you have been really instrumental in my career, especially from the backside and just some of the personal conversations and even the recommendations. And I just want to thank you verbally to everyone who's watching, that this man has really been intricate in my career, period, point blank. Probably one of the most influential persons that's been part of what I do and stuff. So I just want to thank you there. And the last thing, I'm going to give you a full screen. And all I want you to say, I'm Nick Pope. And I always like watching Why the Big Secret or something. I don't know. So let me give you a full screen.
My name is Nick Pope, and I always enjoy watching Why the Big Secret.
Oh, there we go. You nailed it, Nick. I appreciate you. And I got my crew here. I'm going to just let them say hello to you, and then we'll get you out of here. This is the back end crew. Y'all all say hello to Nick Pope.
Hi, Nick. Pleasure
Hi,
to
Hey
meet
there.
Nick.
you.
Hi,
And
everyone.
Hello,
Nicole
Nick.
down at the bottom, Rob G over there. Rob is the one I'm going to send you when you have time. Maybe on the boat, you look at his UFO encounter, and then that's Mateo over at the top. These guys are behind the scene information as to why the big secret. So
Okay, well, great to meet you all virtually, and I
Likewise.
hope to see some of you on the
Yes.
cruise.
Well,
all right, okay, Nick,
good.
appreciate you, and we'll talk. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
You too.
Thanks,
Take
Nick.
care.
Take care. Thank you.
All right, everyone. We got about 10 minutes left. So what do y'all think? You know what? I think we have a great conversation, especially some history conversations. I really enjoyed it for him to answer some of the stuff that I'm actually researching for Robert Friend and all those things. But did anything stick out to you guys of something that he said tonight?
I liked his explanation about the dino beaver. That was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
He's got his
absolutely.
own, I guess, in where he lives.
Yes, he's going to send me some photos. I can't wait to check that out. What about you, Rob?
Nah, I just love listening to the guy talk, man. He's very articulate, and he really is on the side of disclosure, and he's a gem to this whole movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is, and great guy personally. Like I say, I know him personally, and man, he's been very instrumental in my career. And I mean, just the other day, I get a phone call from some of the greatest of people saying, "Hey, Nick Pope said call you," and it's just great, man. It's just really great to know that there's some great people out there that really doing some things. Mateo, anything stick out to you?
Yeah, one thing I was happy to see that he kind of left the door open for his participation in the congressional hearings and maybe take
Yes, he
advantage of the
did, didn't he?
whistleblower
Mm,
Didn't
legislation.
he?
He
Mm-hmm.
kind of didn't want to say too much, but he has his clearances and his NDAs that he has to adhere to, and
Yes, he
maybe
alluded to it. Yep.
once he sees what the net result is, right? Like who else comes forward, maybe he'll be willing. And I always wonder. I bet you guys like him, he's an insider. He knows things that he can't talk about,
Oh my
and we
God.
don't know
Yeah.
how much.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I thought that stuck
Well, you
out
got
to
to
me.
figure Nick Pope, he's been around this game here for like 30 years. So a lot of the
yes.
newcomers may not even know who he is. I would
Mhm.
recommend that you go back and it's on YouTube. Go watch the Citizens Hearing for Disclosure. It
Mm-hmm.
was him,
Yep.
Stanton Freeman,
Yep.
Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, Robert Salas, all the names in ufology
Right.
to help us get to this point. So if you haven't done your homework on Nick Pope, then you should go back and do that. The guys, he's been in everything that had to do with disclosure, and he always takes a part in everything to keep pushing it forward. So you just got to show
Yes.
the man respect.
And
Huge
Rob,
part of the history.
for the audience, I want you to, if you don't mind, post that video of yours in the link, because we're going to have a conversation about this in a few days, and we want to get everybody's opinion. It's on YouTube right now, right? Definitely like the video if you guys see it and share it. But can you post the link in the chat, or do you want to do it?
Yeah, I could post it. It's I haven't made it live. It's
Oh,
unlisted.
you don't want? I'm sorry, because I've been talking about it, so I know
No,
you
it's
want.
all good. It's all good. What I would say is if they could just come over to the channel maybe later this week, and we'll have the whole presentation put together for it
Okay, all right.
and
I
do it
know
the
I was
right
looking
way.
at the link, and it was, I liked it, and it was on YouTube. So
It could
anyway,
be
yeah,
big, man. It could be big.
we're gonna see. We want everybody to look at it, and you guys gonna see. Nick Pope did bring up some things as far as definitely what do you say, the swarms, and so
Mhm.
definitely Rob caught a swarm of UAPs, and definitely we're going to get this thing where he needs it to be, and do that, and then not about disclosure in December the 31st. But
This
that's still coming.
video, I told you, we may get just that one video that gives us something to hang our hat on. The pieces that have been put together with this video tied into other events,
Mhm.
famous events that we all know of, think this all ties together, and I think it's actually bigger than just the sighting. I think there's a bigger picture there. So you guys got to come and check it out later this week, Thursday or Friday, and we'll have it up and ready to go.
Probably Friday will probably be the day when we have our open UFO talk, which is unfiltered opinions. And we'll definitely do that. So y'all make sure y'all show up. If any of you watching, hit me on an email, contact@whythebigsecret.com, especially if you have any, and I'm not trying to disconnect from anyone else, but any minority stories. We're searching and wanted to kind of put some stuff together and find out what has been happening, as you heard with the conversation I had with Nick Pope, what is going on in our community when it comes down to ufology. If you are starseeds or whatever, contact is the email at whythebigsecret.com. Definitely want to talk with you, chat with you, maybe bring you into some of our conversations. If any of you know any one that we can invite, that could be whether they're celebrities or whether they're athletes or whatever, that we can start having conversations about UFOs, definitely in the minority communities as well. Definitely hit me up, connect me, connect me, because we're about to really do something big with this thing, and I want to definitely uncover the stories that I think has been left out of history. And I know there's major ones, and I think it's pretty much from there. Also, one of the things that stood out to most in this conversation, y'all, was just when he did talk about the amendment in this whistleblower thing and how significant it's going to be, and the optimism of how things could change. But like he said, a week is a lot, but 2 years is a lot. So it's like, Harry, guys, get somebody to talk before this thing changes. What do y'all think about that?
I think it's super important. And I'm excited to see what information is going to come out once that amendment goes into effect.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are going to speak out. Hopefully, we have many people that come out from all different areas within the government that are going to expose some of the things that have been going on.
Yeah.
So I'm very anxious to see what's going to happen next year when everything goes down.
Yeah. And for everybody else, keep the movement going, though, at the same time. Don't get complacent because we have these things lined up. Those would just be icing on the cake. Maybe we get something out of those, but just when you go outside, look up, see if you see anything, catch it on film, anything you can do to push this movement forward.
And I think the one wild card in all of that legislation is what you brought up, Roderick, the private sector, the military industrial complex. We know there's people in the government who know stuff that they're afraid to tell, but there is, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. All of this technology, remember, or all of the stuff was given to the private sector so it could stay hidden and out from underneath the guise of the government and the FOIA and all that. Now this act lets those people who were involved in working at Lockheed Martin and all those places, Rockwell and what have you in the past, they can talk now. So there you go. There could be huge population of people we've never heard of who may now be able to come out and talk. So we will see.
Yeah, definitely. All right, everyone. Y'all make sure you guys come. And if you haven't subscribed to Why the Big Secret, we'll be back on Thursday, and then Friday, the crew, we really get strong. So definitely join us. And so we can have a conversation. We just had a reptilian channeler on the other day, just abrupt, but we're actually going to do a full show, deep dive, any question, bar none, to the reptilian channeler, and he's going to face everyone point blank. And so you don't want to miss that show coming up real soon. You don't want to miss it. You really don't want to miss it. So with that being said, guys, thank you. Y'all hang around, and then appreciate y'all. And I think that was a great conversation with Nick Pope. Let me close
Nice.
it
Awesome.
out. And they all know, like I said, we're going to be on this cruise right here. Hidden Secrets Revealed in 7 luxurious days. Los Cabos. I don't know where we're going. I don't know.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, but there's going to be a bunch of speakers and seminars. Nick Pope, I'm going to be there. Jimmy Church, Susan, Ruben Langdon, all these people is going to be there. The link is in the description if y'all want to just get more information. But if you do decide to come, it's going to have a drop-down venue who referred Roderick Martin, Why the Big Secret. Definitely. That's important to know. Man, I can't wait. 7 days out on the water.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to Cabo and Puerto Vallarta, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I can't even pronounce that, but
Very nice.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's another place, but it's gonna be like seminars all over the place. And then there's a couple other big names I can't mention that's gonna be there. They haven't solidified everything, but they told me today, and I'm like, what? These are people I wanted to meet. I'm like, what? Yeah, so I'm like, so that's gonna be cool.
Right,
Nice.
I'm an hour north of LA, man. I better be your +1, man.
No, well,
it was packed up and ready to go.
I would admittedly have to say in front of everybody that possibility.
Hell no.
Or if I had to even let it be deeper.
No.
Yeah.
But Rob, if you go, Roderick's buying you and everyone else around. We heard it here.
Right.
So we're gonna hold
That's what I heard. Let me call Nick Pope.
For 7 days, it better be some snuggle bugger with me. It better be some snuggle bugger with me for 7 days, bro. I'm telling you. So I don't know who she is.
Get our own cabin.
Oh yeah,
Get a hot date.
I don't know who she is, but you're welcome. Contact whythebigsecret.com because we're talking 7 days luxurious. And don't worry,
wingman. You need a wingman, brother. You need a wingman.
No, put a woman with that. Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. All right, guys, let me close this out, and y'all hang around.
All right.
Okay, then. First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of y'all for being here. Hopefully you enjoyed the show tonight with Nick Pope, and some great things are going to be coming. If you have not subscribed to Why the Big Secret at the YouTube channel, there is a link in the description of the video. The cruise link is in the video. Watch episode 3 on Forbidden Knowledge, which is Why the Big Secret. I'm on there and doing a 8-part series from there. If you have not subscribed to Forbidden Knowledge TV, you can get a free trial. You go to whythebigsecret.com. Over to the right, there's going to be a link that you click, and it will give you a free trial and watch all that you want from there. Compliments of Why the Big Secret. So just go to our website, whythebigsecret.com. Click the link at the bottom right to Forbidden Knowledge TV. Get you a free trial. Get you a subscription. Watch some great stuff because they're going to put a lot of stuff into this. In the meantime, it's been a plum, please, and pleasure as well as a privilege. Hopefully you subscribe or hit the like button, share this thing from there. And with that being said, I'm just here and I'm excited. And we're going to see you next week right here. But if you want more, come Thursday, Friday to Why the Big Secret YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel, and we'll be seen. In the meantime, stay strong. Remember, your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. It's time to think why. And when you come here, my job is to give you enough information that you can hear, something you can read, something you can talk about to awaken your curiosity to the possibility that we're not alone in this universe. And that's all I'm trying to do. Thank you for coming.